Hello everyone. Hey, thank you all so much for coming today. It's great to see so many of you, and really wasn't expecting that tonight, so which is really good. I'm Ben. I'm the LGBT part-time officer, and I'm going to pass you over to Tom, who's going to be our chair tonight, and he'll tell you more about how it's going to run and stuff. So yeah, thank you very much.
Cheers. Thanks, Ben. Okay, effectively we're going to be having a question time style format, so questions from the floor. But before that, our panel are going to introduce themselves and sort of go through briefly in a minute, 2 minutes, where they're going to sort of be coming from in this debate. We have a hashtag, and I have my iPad so I can see. If anyone doesn't particularly want to ask a question in front of everyone, they're more than happy to put it on Twitter. I'll ask the panel anonymously. Yeah, so it should hopefully flow quite organically. I've got a couple of housekeeping rules first. Please keep to the theme. This is not a debate about whether religion is a good or a bad thing. Basically be polite about religion, because we're not here to slay heaven forfend, pardon the pun, but yeah. Please do not highlight a particular religion as better than another religion, so don't say, well, what about this religion that says this, you know, yeah. Well, you can do that, but, you know, be polite, effectively. Please keep things honest, you know, polite, cordial. Please do not direct comments at a particular member of the panel. It's very horrible if one person on the panel gets picked on, which I'm sure won't happen, but sometimes these things do happen. Please understand that the panellists will not know the answer to all questions, so, you know, if they say they can't really help that specific area, you know, yeah, that's just what it is. And please word all comments to the panel as questions. So when you ask a question, Don't just sort of make a statement because it's a waste of time, because they can't really respond to that. We're going to be here till about 9 o'clock, I believe, depending on how the flow of questions goes. It might go a little bit longer, a little bit earlier. Apart from that, I think I've covered everything, and I'll be opening it up to, should we go right to left? Is that, or left to right? We can go either way.
Whichever.
Right to left, because I'm right-handed. Okay, great. I think, okay, you get about a minute, 2 minutes each, and please don't go over, because it's terribly annoying for everyone. Okay, great, thank you. And the microphones do work, so, yeah.
I'm not going to use the microphone, because my voice probably sounds worse through it. My name's Tzvi Solomons. I'm the local Orthodox rabbi. And when I was asked to talk about faith and sexuality, I hate this sort of platform.
Oh.
There we go. So I'm going to come down here. It's something that I've been very interested in since I first saw a film that's called Trembling Before God. I don't know if you've ever seen that film, but it's about Orthodox Jews dealing with their sexuality. People who've come out as gay and lesbian, not people who are transgender in that particular film. It's by a man called Sandy Dubovsky. And if you haven't seen it, you really need to. Because I would defy any confirmed Orthodox Jew to see that and not have compassion for people and not to start to understand that you can't help who you're born. There is a position within Orthodox Judaism that says that homosexuality is a revolt against God. And that's not something that I happen to share. It might have been a position that I could intellectually understand before I started to get to know people who are gay or lesbian. But once you start to understand that people are wired in different ways, and not everyone happens to share the heterosexual wiring that I have, then you have to start to understand that people who need faith and religion come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. Look at me, right? And you're all different. That's the nature of humanity. We are all different. And we all have different needs and different requirements. And so I would say that there is a tendency for people to believe, particularly from the gay, lesbian, transgender community, that religion is very censorious. Probably from the verses in Leviticus dealing with sexuality, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. If you're not, look it up. It's in Leviticus 18. And the Hebrew is Ve'et zachar lo tishkav mishka ve'isha to'evahi. With a man you shall not lie as with a woman. It is a to'eva, which is translated in the King James very helpfully as an abomination. The question then you have to ask is, what does abomination really mean in the Hebrew? Well, if you eat shellfish, according to the Bible, that's a to'eva for Jews. And the same if you eat pork, if you are married to a woman and make love with her when she's menstruating, and various other things that you can do that are called a to'eva. So I would say that using the word abomination is actually a mistake. And it's a misunderstanding of that particular idea. And there are aspects of too long.
Okay. Sorry, we've got 3 and a bit minutes. Can we? Sorry, I'm just.
But I'm just saying that the whole idea that there is a conflict between the two is, I think, it's a problem for me, and it's also a problem for you.
Great, thank you. Next speaker, Trish. Just introduce yourself and
Hey everyone, I'm Trish Clinton. I am on the NUS LGBT committee. I'm one of the women's officers. I study theatre at Coventry University. I'm also their LGBT Society's campaigns officer. And I personally identify as queer, but I'm also a practising pagan of many years with a very, very strict Catholic upbringing, which still exists in my family back home. I come here, to be honest, from the perspective of changing faiths. I did that before I knew my own sexuality. I didn't choose paganism because I thought it worked best with my sexuality in a way I thought Catholicism didn't. It was more the case that I changed early on for very different reasons, and since leaving the closet, I found that they still are quite compatible. And so with my mum, who also is quite interested in, I forget what the term is, the study of faith. Theology. She likes theology lots. And it's something that we both have a little bit of a passion for. We like to watch a lot of documentaries on it. We like to read around the subject. She's come with me to ritual before, and I still on occasion go with her to church. I used to be part of a coven, and then I went to university and was a solitary practitioner for a little while, and I'm now restarting a coven with a few people, which for the first time I'm leading. But that's really my perspective. I am someone who is deeply religious. I'm also queer, and really also though I am here from NUS, I'm here from your union, and I'm here to show that even those who run around the country seemingly doing the ultra-radical whatnots have a much more grounded centre, and it's like that.
So I'm Adam, I'm the Vice President of the Atheist Humanist and Secularist Society, but I used to be the President of the Jewish Society, and I'm bisexual, so I'm bisexual Jewish atheist, so I've got a good range of views on faith and sexuality. The debate's titled Can one be religious and gay? And say yes, but in a lot of cases, why would you want to be? The religions that have been enforcing heteronormative standards on people through marriage, through abstinence before marriage, being called an abomination, no matter what that means, isn't very good for anyone. It's certainly at best marginalising. There are certainly several branches of religion where you can be fine. I grew up with liberal Judaism, and there's never been a problem with that. Certainly the Rights and Practices Committee at my synagogue recently decided that they should probably work out what they're going to do when they can have same-sex marriage. And there was no objection to that. So not much going on. Quakerism, Unitarianism seem to be fine. All are quite good, but a lot of religions aren't, and a lot of them still haven't grasped. If we're going on to full range of LGBT and to trans issues, most of them don't have a position yet. They don't know what it is, and especially various gender segregated religions, they don't know what they're doing and they can't do anything about it yet.
Great, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Yep. Hi, I'm Ken. I used to run the LGBT here and now work over in London. So just to give you an idea of the sort of view and background that I'm coming from. So faith and sexuality are two areas of life that sometimes never seem to fit quite comfortably with each other, especially in a lot of mainstream organised religions. Personally speaking, I've already struggled ever since I came out to reconcile the two. Growing up in an extremely evangelical Christian family, you can imagine the reaction when I told them I'm gay. It wasn't exactly a fun conversation. However, I do believe that you can define as LGBT and have faith. There's no reason why your sexuality or gender definition can't stop you having faith. But your involvement in a mainstream organisation, religious organisation, can be quite hard at times. To be openly LGBT and act upon it as a member of a C of E congregation would be quite hard. And the case can be even worse than maybe in a Catholic church or an evangelical church, in a mosque or in other religions as well. For many years, I'll give you an example, in London, there's been a Catholic church that's been running in Soho that has been particularly for LGBT people, and it's sadly come recently that this church is going to be closed down, which is a big hit to the LGBT community and Catholic community in London. And it's attacks like this that make it hard for LGBT people to reconcile with religion. Another example is Stonewall's bigot of 2012, Cardinal O'Brien, the head of the Catholic Church in Scotland, who has recently described same-sex marriage as grotesque and likened it to slavery. Now, how is an LGBT member of a Catholic organisation or church or congregation, whatever it is, meant to feel when they hear views like that coming out? And the same has come out in other religions as well. It's not just Catholicism. Yeah, I don't believe any of this stops a person from having faith. Your faith is a personal decision, and religious bodies have no power over that.
Great. Next speaker, thank you.
Hi friends, is this okay?
Yeah, sure.
Hi, I'm Mark Laces. I'm the Anglican chaplain at the university. I've been here 8 years. I work in a little Hansel and Gretel building just behind the library, which is open to all. I come from the liberal end of the Anglican Church. The godmother of one of my children is gay and in a civil partnership. The perspective I'd probably bring to this would be something, I'm by training a historian, it would be something like the long view, and it would be about the role of religions as they've evolved and what religions are for. I would say that religions are for the transformation of individuals and the creation of safe societies. And all religions have evolved particular rules for how to make societies safe. Some of those rules we've come increasingly to recognise we can dispense with. So, for example, in the Christian tradition, I don't need to worry about whether I eat shellfish or not. Other of those rules we very dearly want to hang on because we think actually they say something about the fundamental nature of the universe, or at least the way that we think it should be. So for me, I think that fundamentally I should always look out for the person who is oppressed, who is in a position of vulnerability. That's not a rule that I think is just about me and my personal feelings. I think it should be a social rule. I think actually I should stand up and shout about it and legislate about it. So actually I disagree. I think faith isn't just personal. Now somewhere within that mess involves discernment. Which rules can we kind of let ourselves be more free about, and how do we do that safely? How do we have that conversation safely without labelling people as stupid at either end of the spectrum? And how do we discern which are the things that transform people for the better? And in my tradition, picking up St. Paul, who's usually kind of one of the bête noirs in this conversation, St. Paul's wonderfully, if you understand him rightly, he says, what is good in life? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness. Now, what kind of rules might we need as a society? Which ones would we want to have as part of our legal framework? And which ones do we want to choose as things we join up to? And which ones do we think we can relax about and let go of? And I think that involves discernment. So that's the perspective I'll be coming from.
Okay, thank you. And lastly,
Yeah. Hi, my name's Harsimrat. You can tell I'm a Sikh. First, I want to probably say what a definition of a Sikh is, because people will think that if you're just born into a Sikh family, you're automatically a Sikh. That's not true. As a Sikh, it's a conscious decision to become a Sikh. So, just like with many other religions, you get baptized, and as a Sikh, it's your personal decision whether you want to get baptized or not. Obviously, parents and family will encourage it. I am baptized, it's been 2 years now, God willing. The way I come from, hopefully I'm going to say, I will try to give the Sikh perspective, but sometimes it will be a personal perspective because I don't know the answer to this question, just quite honestly. Faith and sexuality, any individual can be whoever they want to be. They have that right and they should have that right, and that's what we believe as a Sikh. But also as a Sikh, we believe that there's 5 vices that we should control. And in English, they are anger, lust, jealousy, attachment, and ego, or pride. And part of being a homosexual, or even a heterosexual, and getting married for the wrong reasons, or having a relationship for the wrong reasons, falls into those 5 vices. So as a Sikh, we would try and control those.
great. Thank you. Pieces of work. Cool. Well, thank you everyone for the introductions and for sort of where we're coming from. Quickly, I'm going to run over the ground rules again. Don't direct questions or indeed tweets at any particular person on the panel, because I'm not allowed, and I'm not going to say who it is, but he knows who he is, and I know who he is. So yeah, can we open up questions, and the panel can probably see who he is as well. Can we have questions, please? Anyone? If not, I do have sort of. Oh, there we go. Okay, we've got one. Speak loudly if you could, because we've got a camera and stuff.
Pretty much, well, most of the panel have said so far that faith is mostly a personal decision, and depending on how you define that, I can agree with that or not, but that's not what I'm going to ask a question about. My question is that attitudes to sexualities other than straight vary massively throughout religions. Some are fine with it, some think it's something that is okay in you as a person but you should never act upon. Some think that even being a homosexual or anything other than straight is sinful. But some go one step further and say that homosexuals do not exist naturally. I'm sure they'd say the same about any other sexuality if they could work out what its name was, but they tend not to be very literate on these matters. But my question is, if you think that you can identify as any faith you want, do you think it makes any kind of sense? Do you think it's indeed possible as an internal belief system to identify with a faith with a religion which says that homosexuality or any sexuality other than straight does not exist naturally? Because some say that, and if you are anything other than straight, you know it to be false, and so surely this is a point at which the issues run into each other irreversibly. I'm sure you could get by in religions that say it's okay as long as you don't do anything about it, etc., or even say that it's sinful, but could you get by in a religion that says you don't exist?
Okay, does everyone sort of grasp the question and stuff? Are we good? Quick point of note, can we try and keep the questions relatively short?
Sorry.
It's not an issue, just if we're going to get through plenty, and responses reasonably short. Let's start with the local vicar, I guess.
The local vicar. Thank you. I don't know if I'm charmed or not. No, I don't think so. Before we even get to the question of what is right and wrong, I need to be able to identify with another human being. So I've been in a maximum security prison. I've been in the presence of mass murderers. I would severely want to say, I cannot tolerate you and your behaviour in society, but I have to be able to see that person. So before we get to the questions about what is right and wrong, I need to look somebody in the face. And for me, that comes from the root of I have been looked in the face by God. I am not God. Now, if God can manage to look beyond God's self and see difference, I believe I'm encouraged to try and find that difference as well. The question then follows is again a discernment thing. Actually, what could one then tolerate? And I think that you mentioned the word nature. I'd simply throw in Religions, and in fact most social institutions, are about the shaping of nature. It is our genes to want to propagate ourselves. That is not a wise thing to do profligately. So we shape it with institutions like marriage. So if I were to want to sleep around, there are some social implications with that. So all religions, I would say, appropriately want to shape nature.
Okay. Does anyone want to jump in, or I'll pick on people? We'll start with 1, then 2. Is that okay? Yeah, go on.
No particular order. Does it make sense to identify with a religion that says that you don't exist because homosexuals choose to be homosexual rather than being born? That's effectively the question. Depends what you mean by religion. If you're talking about my religion, there's such a major cultural element to Judaism, to being Jewish, that your identity is bound up with things to do with the way that you observe the week, the rituals that you practice, the symbolism of what you do. So yes, you are imbued with those important aspects of your identity. And so you can identify with that, and people do, even though their rabbi may well say something along those lines. And they desperately want to be accepted, which, you know, there's a dissonance there, cognitive dissonance, because you want to be part of that community, and yet at the same time you know that you're going to be rejected. If you watch the film Trembling Before God, as I've said, you'll see the problems that it causes people, and also the problems that it causes within that community, because they also know what modern psychology tells us about people's sexuality. Science tells us that people are born or acquire their sexual identity very early on, and they're hardwired that way. And so there's a real problem with dealing with people in such an inhumane way that you say that they're choosing to rebel against God.
Great.
Well, I mean, something that popped into my head actually is an unfortunate little loophole that paganism has, is that there is no set holy book. There are a few universal rules that I've not yet met anyone of the pagan persuasion to go against. But because it's not a book, I have met people who have some very, very funny ideas and call themselves pagan, things I wouldn't connect as such. And sexuality has been one of them. I have met homophobic pagans, I've also met racist pagans, which can be very, very upsetting. But the biggest thing I've realised from meeting all these various people is that it is unfortunate, it does come down to a ridiculously personal level. It goes even further than the idea of the institutions, the holy books, the buildings, the tools. It goes so much further than that. And it goes to literally that person thinking, well, whether or not I would call my faith what I've always called it, whether I would call my God what I've always called my God, or whether I'd say the same prayers, but that almost, that religious feeling that you would have once you've come to terms with your own sexuality, accepting, well, this is my sexuality, that's the way it is, you know, might not change, and isn't likely to change either. And it's an idea of finding the balance between the two of them. If someone feels like their religion is a big wide mess, says they don't, that they're no good, well, they can go, well, that's that, but I know in my heart of hearts that what I feel is right on my faith and on my sexuality.
Okay, great. Does anyone want to jump in, especially?
I think this is a wider problem with sort of LGBT activism. Really, is that if people are only going to accept me because I didn't, oh, you don't have a choice in it, that's just who you are, that's not quite good enough. What if I do choose to sleep with men, and that's a choice? Because as a bisexual, I can resist my urges to have sex with everyone I'm attracted to. It would be quite possible for me to only have sex with women, So no, it is a part of it is a choice, and religions seem to be quite keen on getting in the way of my lust. Apparently my lust is bad. I quite enjoy my lust. Occasionally other people enjoy it as well.
Spread the lust over.
Spread the lust. All you need is lust. Anyone from this side?
Well, that's a hard one to follow. But I completely see where you're coming from with your question. Personally, it's a similar thought I had when I was coming to terms with being gay, is that what I learned all through my life going to church and being in a really religious family is that no, homosexuality shouldn't exist, and it was a choice. Yet I could see no reason why that was, and I think it comes down to a personal thing. I think depends how much you want to take what's wrote down in scripture or what people say as 100% is what you're going to believe. Like, if you were to believe everything that's wrote down in the Bible as it was wrote, the time that it was wrote, then it would be hard to say that you're homosexual and still believe in every single word of it. It's whether you say that you believe in the whole themes and the reasons behind it, I think is where you have to come from.
Great. And quickly, if you could, just as I'm conscious trying to get as many questions in as we can.
So, basically, could you believe in a religion that doesn't believe in the existence of homosexuality? As a Sikh, we don't believe it's sinful, we don't believe it's a disease or anything like that, we just believe it's something that's there. But as a Sikh, to be a baptised Sikh, you can't be homosexual because of the morals and the way that we live our life.
Okay, that's short and sweet.
Grab the microphone.
Oh, cool. Does anyone have any questions? Straight away. Just wait for Ben to bring, and possibly say your name as well, so then they'll be able to sort of direct their answers back to you, as it were. You might have to turn it on at the bottom.
Hi, I'm Sam. I was brought up in a Jewish family and went to a multi-faith school, so I can kind of identify with some of the themes that you are describing. But my question is, we've discussed some religions accepting homosexuality, some deploring it, some saying that it's okay as long as you don't do it. What's their obsession with where I put my willy? Why is that a big deal? Because if it's the practice that's the big deal, then they're obsessed with the physical act.
Okay. Why are religious people obsessed with where Sam puts his willy? Does anyone want to jump in straight away? Trish?
Definitely. I'm sorry if this sounds like almost a horror movie theme, but sex actually is part of paganism. It is seen as a magical practice to have sex, which is why it's not important as such, as long as you accept it in yourself. One of my coven is actually asexual and does not partake, but the whole point is that she has to be completely comfortable in her asexuality to be able to practice fully. I am comfortable in my sexuality and I feel I can practice further in that. It's something that it's literally, you know, it's very, very difficult to be pagan in the closet, because there's seen to be a great strength in your sexuality, the accepting of your sexuality, and your enjoyment of your sexuality. Bad sex will be bad ritual. It's always been the case. And I've known festivals where people have gone through a relationship crisis and they can't pray because they are not having any intimate time with their partner, and they just can't connect up. So it's one reason why it's talked about very, very openly in paganism, rather than it being such as a specific interest in knowing what you're doing with your willy, sir. It's more a case of we'd like everyone to be open with what they're doing in general, because then we feel that you can practice magic more comfortably and be connected to the god and goddess more specifically, because orgasm is seen as the most divine moment.
Cool. Anyone else want to jump in? Again, answers reasonably brief, please. Just because I'm conscious of time. So yeah, go.
As a Sikh, well, most people probably already know this, so we don't believe in relationships before marriage or obviously within a marriage, unless it's with your married partner. Why can't you get married to, then your question will change to why can't you get married to for a guy and a woman to a woman. It's mainly because our marriage ceremony isn't about love in the sense, it's about a spiritual union between two people. So it's a spiritual union which basically helps, so it's like a friendship. Friendship, when you're on your own, it's hard to progress in anything that you do. Whereas, for example, let's just take fitness for just a reason, for an example. When you're running yourself or you're trying to get fitter, it's very hard, but when you've got a jogging partner or you've got a fitness partner, it's a little bit easier, you push each other along. It's the same thing with religion. That's why the marriage exists in Sikh.
Yeah, my question wasn't regarding marriage specifically in the Sikh religion, it was more about, you mentioned 5 very valuable qualities, which, you know, I applaud in any religion, but you said that homosexuality wasn't frowned upon, but as long as it was something that should be controlled, because it came under those 5 vices.
Okay, so
why is it
sexual
that the act is
acts
a vice?
should be controlled.
I
Any
think the
sexual
question
act.
is why religion's obsessed with where Sam.
Yeah.
But
Who Sam has sex with.
yeah,
Let's
basically,
rephrase
why
that.
does religion feel? Why is religion intervening in that? Is that?
In the act, because it comes down to the physical act that people are objective.
So as a
religion.
Sikh, my answer would be you should only basically be having sex with one person. So who you choose is entirely up to you. When you're a baptized Sikh, you will obviously choose another baptized Sikh.
And I suspect the reason why religions say that is because although my pagan colleague sort of might not necessarily recognise it, but all religions in a sense see sex as magical.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that sacred dimension which they all kind of want to safeguard. So why should I be concerned about where you put your willy? Because I don't want it anywhere near my children. And I don't want it anywhere near someone who's vulnerable. And I think maybe your willy is a gift to somebody who's not vulnerable, and that you and that other person might be good for each other.
Can his willy?
So that's why I'm concerned. But in a sense, I'm not concerned about your willy any more than I'm concerned about your wallet. What do you do with your money? Why have we separated penises from wallets?
Indeed.
And in a sense, religions are about what makes a good, functional human race. And that's up for grabs.
Yeah.
So sexuality is within that.
Okay.
I think, if I may, I'm not really, I don't ask the question what you do with your willy, and I'm not particularly interested in knowing what people do with their private bits, male or female, in the sense that that's not really what I'm into. I'm into helping people to achieve liberation through the tools that my religion offers. Right, that's what my religion's really about. I think religion is not about controlling people, it's about liberating people. My religion has rules about what you eat. I don't ask everyone who comes up onto the bima, onto the stage in the middle of my synagogue, to read from the scroll, to read from the Torah. I don't ask them how they got to the synagogue. My religion's concerned about how they get there on the Sabbath. But I don't ask them. Why don't I ask them? Because that's between them and God. And yes, there are teachings, but I should be no more concerned about whether they desecrate the Sabbath, whether they eat food that's inappropriate for a Jew to eat according to my religion, or whether they engage in sexual activities that my religion would frown on. Because, take them as a whole, I'm not in God's position to judge them. And, okay, yes, we recognise that the sexual act is very important, and it's, in Judaism we consider it something of a union between two people below that causes unions between aspects of the divine on high. That's why it's special. But it's, why, I think the thing is that we tend to obsess about sex, because it's so interesting and it's such fun.
Okay.
So yeah, I can't tell you why religions do things, because that's up to them to describe their actions really. But the only reason where anyone should be taking an interest in where people put their money in general is for public health issues, and that's quite important there. Otherwise, you should be doing what you want.
No, you should.
Okay,
Surely we can't simply limit where we put our willies to public health issues.
Well, I'm consent.
Surely we
Doing what you want, no? What about doing what you want? What about what other people want?
You plural.
If they
I was talking about you plural because I'm fairly certain that no one thought I was implying that you personally were a public
I just want to clarify, Adam condones consent and doesn't think that you don't need it. We've got a tweet, which is brilliant. This might be for the more religious, theologist people on the panel. Someone would like a distinction between sinful and immoral. Is there a distinction? And if there is, can you provide it? Anyone for me? Well, for the audience. Anyone?
You go first.
The answer is I don't really know. My hunch would be moral is an ethical, philosophical category. Sinful is something to do with falling short of divine perfection. So in a sense, we're all sinful. Right, fine, that's okay. So I think that's possibly where it would lie within Christianity. But our roots are in Judaism, so I'd refer probably to my colleague on the right.
Yeah, if no one else wants to jump in, do you want to have a definition for us?
From a Jewish perspective, a sin is a contravention of any commandment. Morality, as Mark just said, an ethical dimension, and that there's a philosophical element to that.
Okay. Does anyone else have it? We've got to sort of speed up. Does anyone else have a distinction for me?
As I see, it's very similar. Sinful is basically everyone's sinful. So in our scriptures, it says everyone is sinful. Immoral would be something that would go against or would be part of those 5 vices that I explained at the beginning.
Okay, I'm going to speed this up. Does anyone from the floor have a question for us, please? There's one. The mic's just coming to you. Just say your name so they can sort of address it back to you, as we did with sound.
My name is Kawa. I'm from Iraq. Thank you very much. I'm sorry if I cannot send my message clearly because of language barrier, you know. But from the title of your discussion, I think there is a huge difference between faithful person with religious person. Faith isn't related to any religion. A gay can be a faithful person, but I think we can say it's a religious person. It depends on the religion. For example, in Islam, we cannot accept gay, but it depends on you, because you cannot say you are not a faithful. We can say you are not a religious person, because when you become a religious, you have to accept our rules, the rules of the religion. My question is that why same-sex family is an issue, is a problem for young people.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't quite catch that.
Why is it an issue, a problem for young people, not for old persons, old peoples?
Why is it a prominent issue for the younger generation?
Okay.
For younger generation, yeah, you are right.
Does anyone want to answer that for me?
For me, it's not an issue. I believe everyone has the right to live the way they want to live. But like you said, if you want to be part of a religion, can only speak for being part of a Sikh, you've got to live by the things that are kind of written or told to us through history.
Anyone else want to jump in and answer?
Why is it generational, is what you're asking?
Sorry?
Why is the issue of whether you could, for example, same-sex marriage, why is it so generational? Is that what you're asking?
I asked if it is an issue, a problem for the young generation, not for old generation.
Yeah, because I think people tend to be a product of the people that they live amongst. And I think that if you lived in Victorian times, then you'd have those values. Although you have to accept that the Victorians didn't always live by those values. They just covered it up. And I think what we have to understand is that people live in certain societies. For example, there are societies where people deny that there are gay people. I would say that that's because gay people cover it up. We know in this country, if you read, have you read Kenneth Williams' diaries? He was a very well-known actor. I think he's a genius. He was a gay man, and he lived at a time when it was prohibited to act on your homosexuality. But his diaries are full of encounters with young men. And he had to cover it up. So he covered it up, even when he wrote about it, he covered it up, he wrote it in code. Eventually he found it so difficult to be gay, even though by that time it had become legal to be a practicing gay man. He committed suicide. I think that tells us about the way that things have moved on, because since then there are people who still commit suicide because of the problems of coming out and the pressures that are there on them. But it's a lot easier in this society than it is in what we might term more conservative societies. But I believe that there are many thousands of people in Iraq and in any other country you care to mention who are gay, who just don't show it because they're too scared to show it.
Okay, I'm going to speed along.
Can I make a very quick point?
Yeah, go on.
Just as a very quick sort of point, I heard that yesterday in the equal marriage vote that all the Muslim Labour MPs voted for the bill in support. So, which was very nice, because there were a lot of Islamophobic groups that were losing their argument. So.
Okay, cool. I think I probably should mention on that point, I think suicide is the second or third biggest killer amongst under 25 LGBTs. So it's quite a statistic. We have a Twitter question, so yeah, I'm just going to read it out for everyone to hear. Why do some people feel the need to react in a negative way, e.g. hate crimes, towards someone's sexuality based on their beliefs? So what do you think drives people to hate crimes based on religious beliefs?
I think it's to do with how they're taught. I think a lot of the hate crimes you see are between younger generations, and I think that very much comes on how they're brought up and in what religious background they're brought up in, or what background they're brought up in, that makes them feel that they have that view. Someone instilling that view on them, and them seeing the only way of showing that view is to do it through a hate crime. Obviously that is completely wrong, we shouldn't be accepted in this country. But I think it's more about people's education more than actually what they're really thinking.
Is anyone else?
Yes. I think that people often react in a visceral way. What I sometimes say if I encounter people who claim that, for example, as I've said, there's an attitude that being gay is a revolt against God. I ask people, have you ever tried being gay? Because if you're straight and that's the way that you are, you're going to laugh at that. It's a silly thought. It's just like asking a gay person to be straight. You can't do it, but it's visceral. It's in your guts. And so if you let your guts guide you, without thinking and without feeling and without understanding the problems that people go through, then you just lash out sometimes. I think that's the way people behave. If they allow themselves to act in a visceral manner, then they go down to their primordial violent selves, rather than controlling that and directing themselves in a more constructive way. So I think people are violent because they don't understand there's a lot more to the situation than the feeling that they have of revolt. compulsion or whatever it may be inside them.
Yeah, and I guess I'd just add, it's not only religious people that do hate crimes. I mean,
No.
I think that at root there's an interesting religious diagnosis of what the problem is, and that's our inability to often live in community because of various things. In the Sikh tradition, you heard about some of the five. The Christian tradition has various other things it says about why we find it difficult to live with other people and how we overcome them.
But we share something, Mark, you and I, and I'm sure
Facial
every other, well, apart from facial hair, because we all share, every religion, any religion you care to mention shares something which I think people who commit the hate crimes forget, which is you shall love your neighbour as yourself. And you'll find that's a golden rule that is right the way across every religion. And the question then you have to ask is one that's asked Jesus in the Christian New Testament, which is, who is your neighbour? And, you know, is a gay person your neighbour? Of course they are. Everyone in this room is my neighbour. And I've got to recognise the human in them, and that's what my religion should be teaching people.
I just want to, one provocative thing, it's really interesting that there are no conservative, I mean really conservative voices on this platform. So from 1968, when it wasn't, homosexuality was no longer illegal, we've gone within a generation to a point where people who are very conservative are frightened to articulate their views. I mean, I think they're wrong. I think there are other ways of doing things, but I'm not sure that's altogether healthy.
Do we have any questions from the floor? We've got. Do you want to go to Cara and then go to the lady there with her hand? Well, it's coming anyway. And can you say your name just so the panel can direct?
Hi, I'm Cara, and I'm not coming at this from any opinion standpoint, but I think it's something that's a wider concept to be discussed around religion, but sexuality can fall into the discussion quite easily. And that is that when you look at holy texts and the age in which they were written, where do you draw the line, and can you draw the line between that which has now been deemed as almost non-applicable in today's society because of the age in which it was written, for example, the eating of shellfish, which was mentioned, and that which is still applicable in today's society, and obviously sexuality is prime in that discussion as to, is that on the line? Is it something that's going to become something that's no longer applicable because of the age? Or I think that's the reason that we're having this debate, is because where is it on that line? And can that line even be drawn anymore?
Okay. Did everyone get the question?
Sorry.
Cool.
It's a long word.
No, it's fine. Who wants to start? Can someone possibly has exposed this mic? Adam, do you want to jump in?
Yes, I can go. So, as a humanist, and especially as a Jewish humanist, so I try to take good ideas where I find them effectively. So I especially like culture, sort of cultural works, as it were. So if the ancient books I come across have something nice in them or something good that I like, then I'll take that. And if it has abhorrent bigotry, then I won't take that. And I think people are quite capable of thinking for themselves and deciding what they think is a good idea and what isn't, regardless of the age of the book they're reading it in.
Anyone else want to jump in? Anyone?
Well, I reject the very idea that the eating shellfish is irrelevant in our society. It's just as important to me in my religion as other issues that we might discuss. But, you know, if you're not Jewish, it's irrelevant because it's not given, that's not part of what I believe is given to other people. I believe that if you're not Jewish, you have 7 basic rules, which might be called natural religion, which basically amount to being a decent person. And as long as you keep those basic rules, then you have a place in heaven. If you're Jewish, it's a bit harder. But, you know, that's something that we choose. That's why we call ourselves chosen, because we choose to do those.
As I see, I mentioned at the beginning the 5 vices. We also have 5 virtues. And I've just written them down in English so I don't forget, because my head naturally thinks Punjabi. Truth, contentment, love, faith, and humility. So we use the 5 virtues to help us combat the 5 vices. Whether our scriptures are applicable nowadays, personally I think absolutely. So there's many debates on whether as a Sikh we should still be wearing the give on, we should still wear a turban. Absolutely, they all have meanings, they all have practical and spiritual meanings, and only when one, I wouldn't say totally commits, because that kind of gives a connotation of blind faith, when one researches. So as a Sikh, we are encouraged to ask and keep asking until we get an answer that we are happy with, and their answer is there in the scriptures. So for a Sikh, I don't think that our scriptures or the words that are given to us, will ever change as time goes on. Also, I should mention that as a Sikh, the scriptures were written by the gurus or the teachers at the time by their own hand, not 50 years or 100 years later.
No, I was going to say you should probably...
Just very, very briefly, I mean, it's exactly the right question. And it's always been the right question. Religions always have to do that careful sifting. In the Christian tradition, I worship the incarnation, the shape of God in a human being. I don't worship a holy book. A holy book helps me to discern how I might emulate that human life. I mentioned love, joy, peace. They're rather like the virtues that Hasima mentioned. So there's always that discernment. Like, is this way of trying to instantiate, make plain a Christ-like life, is it helping me do that? I need to talk with people that I need to be able to argue with and take time over making that decision. So, yeah, it's exactly the right question.
Cool. Very, very quickly, if you could.
Cool. Well, because all the rules of my faith are passed on by word of mouth, they change with time, but there are some things which are still not really seen as universal acceptance, like polyamory, which is very much accepted in paganism, and hand fastings, which are not quite like marriages. They can last for a year, or for a lifetime, or for as long as love lasts, or for several lifetimes. And but especially with things like polyamory, it's something that we have to keep quite quiet, because people find that very immoral.
For those of us who don't know what it means, could you say?
Oh, sorry. It's when you engage with more than one romantic or sexual partner at a time. Usually quite committed relationships. I've met people who are in hand fastings that are very open. They will have other partners. It is seen as quite immoral still, but it's something still quite that's still celebrated in my faith quite a bit. But it's finding the balance, and one reason why I still think, although a lot of paganism gets written down in various books, where the mouth is still used, because we feel it's a good way of keeping up to date with people. Like if something really needs to be changed, you won't pass that on to the next person.
I think, was it you that wanted to ask a question? Do you still want to? I'll give you priority because you put your hand up at the same time as Cara.
I'm just thinking now it might be quite similar to the first question that we had, but maybe not. I know the theme today is about can you be gay and religious, but I just wanted to ask, how can you be gay and religious when so many religions out there are so, they basically persecute, in my opinion, homosexuals. I am personally a Christian evangelical, and all people in my church think that homosexuality is completely wrong and is sinful, and I haven't met a lot of gay people around, but I don't think, I don't understand how can a gay person be religious if there's so much persecution around, and how can religion start accepting homosexuality, I guess.
Cool. Ken, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, this is very much what I was saying, my starting speech bit. I completely agree with what you're saying. My family are from evangelical church, and I completely know where you're coming from with saying what you did say. And this is where I think it's very much down to whether an LGBT person would want to affiliate themselves with such an organisation. But then you can still have that faith. You don't necessarily have to regularly go to a church to say you are a Christian. You could practice Christianity wherever you wanted to practice it. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a church. You could practice evangelical Christianity wherever you wanted to practice it. There's no reason. It's, as we were saying, it's very much taking the views of the Bible and looking, or whatever religious text it is, and looking at your relationship with God, or looking at your relationship with that faith. So So I think you can be religious, but I completely agree with what you're saying. To be part of a religious organisation or a congregation like that can be extremely hard. And I know you, in a lot of churches, you probably wouldn't be accepted.
Does anyone want to?
I've already said, obviously, you can't be a baptised Sikh and be homosexual. However, as a Sikh, we have a concept called langar. Some of you may remember the langar on campus last year, which was giving out of free food. Now, the whole reason as a Sikh why we have a langar hall or a room to give out community food is, doesn't matter whether you're a king, a pauper, female, male, heterosexual, homosexual, black, white, everyone is allowed in the Gurdwara. So every week since I started university, so I'm in my 3rd year now, I've been inviting school groups down to have a look around the Gurdwara. I've been, taking adult groups down to have a look around to see what we're about. And as they see the langar aspect, the community-based aspect, being there for people who need help is always going to be there.
Hang in there. Things change. Your church probably are fine about divorce now, more or less. They wouldn't have been 30 years ago. Ask the question. Why do we feel so important? Is that an issue? Do it gently. Keep on asking. Things change.
Okay, I'm gonna. You 10 seconds, if you could, just because I'm conscious.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it's to do with people's attitudes. The question that I got from Jewish friends over here: why am I so obsessed with where you put your penis? No, I'm not, and I don't see why anyone else should be. Yeah, okay, it's part of my religion, but we have a heck of a lot of obsessions in my religion. Why should this be more of an obsession than anything else? That's the question that I'd ask. That's the question that I ask people within my own Orthodox group. Why is this a greater obsession than whether they eat shellfish or drive to the synagogue on a Sabbath?
We've got a Twitter question, so I'm going to read this out because I quite like it. The ancient Greeks did it. When and why did homosexuality become such a bad thing? Valid point, ancient Greeks did a lot of things. You can jump in. As a historian, actually, you might like to jump in.
Do you know, one of the real problems is that we use the word homosexuality to mean all sorts of things. I'm in favour of covenanted same-sex relationships. I think they look Christ-like. I'm not in favour of pederasty, which is what actually happened most of the time in the ancient world. An older Greek male took under his wing a young Greek fellow. There are only 3 instances in which there were penetrative acts between men that were recognised in the ancient world. One was in education. So, how are you getting on with your tutor? Second was temple prostitution. Doesn't seem particularly equal or about equality or covenant to me. And the third was what you did to your enemies. You buggered them. So when most religious texts talk about homosexuality, they're not talking about Mr. and Mr. Smith who live next door.
Can I add to that from a historical perspective? From my own tradition, the line in Leviticus, "You shall not lie with a man as with a woman," is interestingly interpreted in the Talmud, which is where my rabbinic tradition derives its authority. The Talmud says in Nedarim 51a, if you want to look it up, that the word to'eva, which is mistranslated as abomination, can be understood as you make a mistake with respect to her, implying that this specific prohibition is aimed at a man who is already married, within that relationship going off with another man instead of staying faithful to his wife. And it's therefore aimed at someone who's being unfaithful in a particular way. Now, whatever you might say about that, it does somewhat narrow the understanding of that particular action. And I think you have to understand that there is more than one interpretation of what that verse means.
Can I ask what the Judaism position on homosexuality is then, if that's been misinterpreted?
The Jewish position on homosexuality?
In 5 seconds.
I can only reply, 2 Jews, 3 opinions.
Okay. I'll take that. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah, sure. Who's got the microphone? Kerry, can you just say your name so the panel can address you and so I can make a note of it? Oh, sorry, I was doing it to the guy behind. But you can go next if you like.
Hi, I'm Matt. I'm both Catholic and gay. When I came out, my various members of my family spoke to 2 or 3 priests to ask the official opinion to make sure that I wasn't going to be damned, essentially. Now, all priests that spoke to various members of my family and myself essentially said that their personal opinion was that they didn't have an issue with it, and they believe in a loving God, and why would he stop somebody being in a loving relationship? Obviously, the Catholic Church has its official opinion, as does the Church of England to a certain extent, and various arms of Judaism and Islam, etc. So my question is mostly, I suppose, directed to the preachers on the panel. Do you feel a certain frustration with what the official voice of your religious bodies says, and what you feel on a personal and parishioner or congregational level?
Yes. I wrote to my bishop when there was some sort of public pronouncement. I just saw the headline, Church House condemns. And I wrote to my bishop and I said, look, fine, let's first of all say, let's be honest, there are a diversity of opinions. B, when we say something, let's apologise if it's going to offend somebody. So yeah, I get frustrated. We're a community still, we're not perfect, we're still working out things, and I think that's fine. Let's do it gently and calmly, and let's do it honestly.
Okay. I really do feel that, as you say, it's a generational thing. I'm from a much younger generation than many in your audience. If it weren't so offensive, I'd say some of my best friends are gay. My cousin's gay. They're in a loving relationship. I have to be able to recognise that it's way better. I mean, if you're just thinking about it merely from the sexual health point of view, it's way better for 2 men to be in a loving, monogamous relationship than not. And for those reasons alone, I think that we have to reassess the way in which we react to this. Whether the halacha, Jewish law, can bend to fit current approaches in the rest of society, I don't think that halacha has ever done that, because that's the nature of Orthodox Judaism, which, ironically, most people will just accept. This is the beast that we're dealing with, and we just have to work in a decent way with who we are and where we are.
Cool. Does anyone on the panel really burningly want to jump in on this?
I actually do.
Go on, quickly.
Just really quickly, I actually have a little story very similar to this. I said earlier I was raised in a very strict Catholic background. My mum's actually the catechist of our church, my brother's an altar server, and our last priest at our parish didn't like my younger brother and didn't let him take his first Holy Communion because of his autism. This is true. Which was fun. We had to get a lot of nuns to rally against him before they let him. They did in the end. Turns out nuns are scary. And now he's an altar server. But this was one particularly nasty guy who said, you can't do this, you can't do that. And my mum, as the catechist, rebelled heavily against him. And every time he brought to her, doing Little Church, which I did for a few years, a piece of scripture that she didn't agree with, we do Noah's Ark. And we did Noah's Ark about 15 times a year, because she was adamant, like a man is the head of the house. Noah's Ark sounds lovely today. So I've noticed, like, especially with things like Catholicism, it's more about the people running the show at the bottom. So find allies like catechists, like nuns, people who are devout to their faith, who are doing things on the ground, rather than a figurehead who might be saying a lot in the news.
Okay, thank you. I'll add to that quickly. I went to Catholic school and nuns are terrifying. Yeah, mentally scarred. We've got another Twitter question, and then we'll pass on the mic if someone's asked. Do you think homophobia originally stems from religious teachings? Anyone on the panel want to jump in, Ken?
To an extent, yes. To an extent, no. I think it comes from ignorance and NUS's favourite word, heteronormative society, which...
Rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
It does, it goes so well. Which has, as much as it is NUS's buzzword, they do have quite a good point. If you live in a society that generally is always about a man and a woman, when there's two men or two women together, it's always going to create some tension. There's always going to, because it's not seen as what people would see normal. Therefore, homophobia will come from that. But an aspect of it will always come from religion. When a religion says and has the power to speak to so many people around the country so easily that homosexuality is wrong in some form, or however you define your sexuality or gender definition, then it is always going to create some homophobia.
Does anyone else want to jump in?
Yes, I'd say perhaps that the religious teachings come from homophobia a lot of the cases. Certainly when the head of the Protestant church in Madagascar is saying that condoms are going to promote homosexuality and sin and going to kill everybody, I can't read that quote. Or, you know, when religions, a lot of times religious teachings come from the homophobia and not the other way around. And sometimes the homophobia comes from the religious teachings.
Do our religious...
And Roger Scruton, the atheist philosopher, came out against gay marriage yesterday.
Luckily, I'm not a cohesive organisation. I have to be responsible.
But I think I suspect that there might be fundamental issues about how we as human beings deal with otherness. How do I deal with something that is unusual to me? And yes, of course, that overlaps with religion, but in a sense that works in a deeply primitive sense of skin colour or sex, or even children in a class, they will define themselves by hair colour. And they do that kind of automatically because there's something instinctive and primal about safety and what looks like the same. Push the other over there. Religions at their best try and break that down. Steve mentioned the parable of the Good Samaritan. Religions at their worst really fix it.
I was just going to say, I think it's because we're tribal. We're tribal. We tend to try to identify with groups. This is LGBT, so a lot of people in this room will identify with a particular group. Some of us belong to several groups. I think most of us will admit to belonging to several groups. But we try and define other people, and by defining other people, we ourselves, each of us has a certain amount of control freakery within us. None of us is entirely unprejudiced. None of us is entirely free in that way. And as Mark said, religion should be ideally a way of breaking down barriers, but it can also be a tool to raising barriers and defining and limiting and controlling others. And I think that's really where it comes from. It's controlling other people and defining them and defining oneself as other and finding a confrontation and conflict where there isn't necessarily one. Forgetting our common humanity.
Great. Do you still want to ask a question? Cool, then we've got a couple of Twitter questions, which is great. So if we could keep question brief, answers brief, roll on, because I'm conscious of time.
Okay, so in modern British society, we generally accept that prejudice and discrimination are bad things. Treating people differently based on their gender or race or religion or sexuality are bad things. On the other hand, you've got religion, which is usually about being good. It's about doing what's right, either by man or by God, depending on your perspective. But a lot of religions, particularly religious institutions, discriminate against gay and other non-heterosexual people. They aren't allowed to join, or they aren't allowed to marry, or they aren't allowed to take up positions in the church hierarchy. So how do you reconcile religion, which is about being good, with discrimination, which most people seem to think is bad?
I'll leap straight in.
Yeah.
I think that's it's an interesting question. I think you're absolutely right. Every religion discriminates. You can't turn up at my synagogue and become a member unless you're Jewish. have to be Jewish. How do you become Jewish? Well, I would disagree with, for example, Adam's synagogue. Adam's synagogue says that if your dad's Jewish, you're Jewish. My synagogue says if your mum's Jewish, you're Jewish. He goes by patrilineal or matrilineal descent. You can't convert to Judaism through orthodoxy without going through a very rigorous course of expectation and learning. We all have barriers for any kind of institution that we join. You can't get into this university unless you pass the exams. Okay, so that's a lot wider, open to a lot larger group of people. But at the same time, you know, how many people get into a university? So I would say that it's not necessarily discriminating not to marry two men or two women. Those are the rules. If you want to be in part of my club, that's the rules. You know, you take it. And if you're not interested in or into it, then you go to somewhere where they do. And if you are a gay man or lesbian or transsexual and you want to be part of the Orthodox community, then you have to accept that there are limitations, because those are the rules of the club. But that's the same with any club. You have to accept the rules.
The women in your club don't have the same rights as the men in your club, and this is fine just because it's the rules of the club.
Well, that's if you join the club, then that's the way it is. You know, you can argue about it, you can debate it. That's fine.
What about those born into the club?
What do you mean? Those born into the club?
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, that's the way it is.
Well, no, I mean, like if you just look at it, say you have two Orthodox Jewish parents.
Yes.
And you've been raised in that faith, and you feel devoted to that faith, and you realise around 13 or whatever that you're gay.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do?
Well, you can come out as gay in that club, but you can't marry someone who's the same sex.
So you can still continue.
No, of course, you're not chucked out because you're gay. You don't stop being Jewish because you're gay. That doesn't work.
Are you allowed to openly practice your sexuality? Say if I was an Orthodox Jew that I wanted to bring my boyfriend to synagogue, who was also an Orthodox Jew, and openly display him as my boyfriend, would that be allowed?
Well, I think you'd find that in any group of people, different people will react in different ways. I suspect in my own community, people wouldn't bat an eyelid. I suspect that there are other communities, for example, if you were to go to some in Stamford Hill, they would. However, I will point out that there are synagogues which are set up by and for, Orthodox synagogues that are set up by and for gay and lesbian transgender people. And one of my friends actually ran one in Stamford Hill.
So have they not created new rules to the club? Effectively, could there not be new rules to this club?
No, they haven't created any new rules. They asked that one of the rabbis of the Hasidic group, the Square Movement, whether they needed the barrier between men and women. He said, this is a gay synagogue. You don't need one of those barriers. What do you need it for? So they don't have one in there. It's totally, in that sense, it's unlike your normal Orthodox synagogue, because men and women sit together.
In Sweet Synagogue, if you bring your boyfriend, you can sit with him, but if you bring your girlfriend, then you can't.
Well, if you sneak upstairs, you might be able to, but someone probably tut at you.
I would just slightly beg the question. The question was an alternative of good versus discrimination. I'll just riposte. Maybe there are some things that we are right and good to discriminate about.
And you think sexuality is one of them?
I think that the way we use our sexuality might be one of them.
How do you mean that?
Let's return to the question about willies. How I wield my willy might be an issue of discernment, and out of that might come goodness.
Is that
I'd take discernment to your comment about it going near a child.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And that's all I'm kind of saying. So actually, we do use discrimination in that sense. We draw a line around certain practices, and so in that sense, discrimination is a good thing. We discriminate against certain practices which we think socially are not good. But the question is, where is that line of discrimination valid and where isn't it? So I don't think there are alternatives.
I'm going to have to stop you there because we're in a massive rush. I'm going to
Say
read.
more after.
I'm going to read one out from Twitter. Then the chap who had his hand up. Then was there someone else who had that? Then you. Then oh god, there's so many. Right, there's like 3 on Twitter, but I'll choose one. I was born into a strict Hindu family. This isn't me. This is on Twitter. I'm still not out to my parents. How would you react if your child/future child came out as gay? I assume that that's going to be aimed at the more religious people on panel. But everyone can have a stab at answering it, but I imagine Ken and Adam would be fine with it. Yeah, who wants to jump in? How would you react if your child or future child came out as gay, lesbian, bi, transgender, whatever? Yeah, go for it.
I give him or her a hug, tell them I love them.
Well, they can never get married in your church.
But they can't get married in my synagogue, but they know that. So they're, for goodness sake, they're a rabbi's child. They don't know it now, and they don't ever know it. It's a bit like, I mean, this discussion's a bit like the lesson I once gave at a Jewish conference on sex and Jewish laws on sex, and a couple were heard leaving it saying, that was really, really interesting, but why did he have to say it was within marriage? Orthodox rabbi. You know, I'm an Orthodox rabbi, and, you know, but my love for my children is unconditional. And that's really one of the problems that everyone has to face in life. You can't always do what you want to do, but that's the nature of life.
Due to, I'm assuming this question was aimed at the more religious and not the...
Without actually being in that situation, I'll be honest with you, I don't know. It's just like, if when I get married, say to my parents I want a divorce, what would their reaction be? I don't know until you're in that situation. Or for example, the abortion question, would you abort? You never know until you're in that situation. At this moment in time, I think I would pretty much, give my kid a hug and say, okay, that's your decision. However, you have to realise the other things that come with that decision as well. And love is unconditional. Me and my dad have this debate all the time.
Can I
love,
just say, it's not a decision.
Sorry.
If I didn't say that there, it would have.
To come out as a decision.
Yeah, to come out, that's what I
But it's a decision you should probably take, because the closet can't be a fun place. Not that I know.
I have to say, I have discussed this with my children, and I've made it very clear that I will love them, whatever they are, and it's unconditional. Parents' love for the child should always be unconditional.
Are we happy to go on for longer? Is there anyone that needs to go from the panel? Are we happy to go on till half past?
There's about 4 questions coming up, so yeah, it probably will be about that long. Is everyone okay for that?
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're definitely going to have to speed up questions and answers.
Why only half an hour?
Stop rushing them. I can't. If I didn't rush them, we'd still be on question 1. Trish, 10 seconds.
I'd actually, I know it sounds a little stereotypical again, I'd buy my child a broomstick because it's the start of a new journey and it's nice to sweep away, so I'd like to get a gift, personally, but it'd be the same if they told me, like, you know, I'm going to move away to somewhere, I've met someone new, I'm moving to a new place. It'd be like, right, you need a broomstick before you go anywhere. So it's starting something new, I'd be glad to be honest, and I'd want to get them something to mark that.
Cool. There's a couple of questions on Twitter. I'm going to not ignore them, but I'm going to try and get the questions done from people here first. Just say your name and question quickly.
Hey, I'm Peter. My question is, if there's rules to religions, are rules to clubs, as you said, is it fair for society to ask religions to change these rules to fit society, or in fact is it important for religions to take on these new rules as society changes?
Okay. Yeah. Who wants to jump in? And you've got about 20 seconds to answer.
It's a brilliant question, and it's exactly the issue at the moment. Same for the Anglican Church. How do state rules and rules that people choose within the church rub up against each other? Of course, both rules in states and in churches change. I think we probably take time in doing that and do it carefully.
Horrible word. Change. Any community finds it difficult, and even the most liberal of societies finds change difficult to manage. managed. And the way in which you deal with people it also needs to change according to what is more obvious in the society you live in. You know, you go to some countries, they will deny that there are any gay people around. You go to other countries, and everyone's out. Yeah. So the question is, how do you deal with the same issue in both societies? You'll deal with it differently. But I think you have to recognise that some systems are more flexible than others.
Just to take a bite of the cherry, I mean, if you look at things like the Nadia Wader case with the cross, there's been a Sikh Bengal case, where we're watching the way in which those issues across a range of things, not just sexuality, are beginning to be negotiated. It's mainly on a case-by-case basis. They're often inflammatory in the press.
I also should say that, I mean, I really didn't mention this, but for the last question, for me, it's akin to saying, how would you react if your child told you that they were going to marry out?
Does that mean out of the religion?
Out of Judaism,
oh,
yes.
Okay.
We practice endogamy, marrying into the religion. So there's actually a very interesting response from a very devout Orthodox rabbi, an ultra-Orthodox rabbi, who says, if your son or daughter marries out, you should go to the wedding. And I found this, and I asked several of my colleagues about it, and they said, no, well, hang on, he said that. Oh, well, perhaps I'll have to re-examine it. So I think there is room for change, certainly within the Jewish halachic system, but it's managed in a particular way. It has to come organically. You can't just say change like that. And society, it's not for society to tell people to do that.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to have to speed this up. Kerry, I think there's a chap just behind you who wants to.
My name is Moses. I'm a pastor, Christian pastor. The issue of sexuality and religion within the Christian faith is viewed from the angle of adhering strictly to the tenets of the Bible. Freedom without responsibility, freedom in irresponsible manner is not accepted in Christianity. And irresponsible behavior, as far as Christianity is concerned, is a willful misinterpretation of the Bible concerning any tenet. On the issue of homosexuality, sexuality and homophobia, particularly, the Bible has made it clear, unambiguously, that it is a sin, it is unacceptable, it is anti-Christ, and so therefore, no church, no Christian should condone that behavior. Now, anybody within the Christian fold that identifies himself as a homosexual is like a sheep in a wolf's clothing. And the Bible clearly tells us that that should not be accepted. Now the question, yes, there is a clarification. The question is, can't homosexuals go form their own church and bless their own marriage instead of coming to persecute churches to accept them by force when they know that it is a clear violation of the Bible?
Okay, Moses, we've got it. Should the LGBT community form their own churches to bless their own marriages rather than forcing it? Well, forcing being the operative on other ones. We'll come to you next, but can these answer the question? Guys, go very, very quickly because I want to get through it.
It's not what's being proposed. That's not what's happening. It's not being forced on anyone. In fact, it's going to be enshrined in law that the Church of England specifically is prohibited and has to go through Parliament to do this. Mark knows more about this than I do, but I've been following it in the papers. I take 4 newspapers. Was it 5? I forget. And it's all over the news. It's not being pushed on anyone. My religion also, it's not being pushed on Jews, it's not being pushed on anyone. So no one's being persecuted, quite the other way.
As well, I'd just like to add, there are LGBT-friendly churches popping up all over the shop. I knew there was one back home in Liverpool which I knew a lot of people from that was quite nice. But just to go back to a little point that you made, I mean, It's been a little while since I read the Bible in all good faith, but I don't remember it mentioning anything towards female homosexuality. So I don't know where exactly I'm causing a big ass problem in many ways. But it's true, there is, I watched all 6 hours of that debate yesterday, and I nearly threw my computer out the window in the process, but there is a quadruple lock on the law to make sure that no religious organisation that can be forced to conduct a same-sex marriage ceremony.
And I'd like to add in quickly that I don't need your religion to condone my feelings or behaviour.
What do you want? Ken? Very quickly, 10 seconds.
Yeah, Christianity, from my perception of it, is all about loving each other equally, and if I'm to love a man, then I don't see what's wrong with that. Like, you love each other and you should love each other's neighbours as well. And that's all about Christianity. So,
do you want to...
Oh, yeah, I'd love to wade in.
This is your religion.
It's my religion, I'll sort it out.
Act as a missionary for Christianity. Bridge the divide.
All hail Mark!
Yeah. Ben, you get it. You're the first. You're the special one now. I mean, let's be honest. Let's just be honest. There are a diversity of views among Christians. That's a factual point of view. We could say we're wrong. I think it'd be more honest to say that we're just confused. And that confusion is compounded by culture. In the Anglican Church, it's compounded by the fact that we're worldwide, so we straddle what goes on in sort of liberal London and Nigeria. And how on earth do we remain one family? That's really difficult. And it's probably best done by trying to understand the other. So the only thing I could do is go find a gay Christian, spend a lot of time listening. If at the end you still can't get it, that's fine. But that's probably the best place to start. Go pray together. See if it works. See if the Spirit of God's there. And if that's not, well, that's fine. You've given it a try. But I suspect that's the way we have to do it. And I have to do it with my more conservative brethren. I mean, I think that's the only way we can move forward in our religion, surely. Yeah. If we're not sure, if we're confused.
Cheers. Very quickly, again, 10
seconds. I can't really
seconds.
answer your question because it's quite a lot kind of on the church side of it. As they see, I've already said homosexuality is not a sin, it's not a disease, nothing like that. But one thing that is in our scriptures, it doesn't mention any kind of relationship between a man and a man, a woman and a woman. It describes every soul as being feminine and God being male. So the only relationship it describes is a male-female relationship.
Right, very quickly before we go to the next question, we've had an apology for the Downton Abbey theme tune going off on someone's phone. So, yeah, I think it's this lady who'd like to ask a microphone. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Ilham, and I come from Islam background, and I have gay friends. And my question is, how do you define being religious? Because religious is quite an ambiguous word. You can find Muslims will say I'm not religious, or Christians say I'm not religious. So we're in the new age now, which is religion there's an evolution of it. So it means that homosexuality has to be part of being spiritual. Is your life, is your choice, and people should accept that. And I think there is a lot of misunderstanding about homosexuality. I think it has always been existed, but before it was a taboo, but now they have more rights to express their views and to be part of society. I guess my question is, how do you define being religious? Because religion is very ambiguous. Being religious means you believe in something, you believe in codes, or being spiritual, or how do you define it? Thank you.
Yeah, cheers. How do you find religious? Anyone?
I think I mentioned this in my beginning. You are a Sikh if you are a baptized Sikh. You can't just be born into a Sikh family to become a Sikh. And then obviously with being baptized there is a code of conduct that you follow. Mainly you live by the 5 virtues and you try and avoid the 5 vices.
Cool. Very quickly, anyone else? I'm aware that people are starting to leave. Probably
there's a huge variety of spirituality, and you're religious if you seek to approach the divine, and you seek modes of approaching the divine. And you should try to do this, I believe, by modelling a good and moral life. And that's the most important thing. And whether you're gay or straight, that's how you're born, as far as I'm concerned. It's the way that you act that defines you as a human being, and particularly the way you act towards other human beings. And you can't approach God if you can't approach other human beings with respect and dignity.
Just very quick, I'd say the big difference between faith and actually being religious is having a faith is when you call out to a deity or some scripture when your house is on fire, and having a religion is when you practice when there's no fire around as such, you know. If it's a crisis moment, there may be someone specifically calling out to, but if in general you just want to practice, then that makes you religious. I know people who have been, you know, I mean, I'm a lapsed Catholic. I don't practice that anymore. I can't specifically leave, got to write a letter and stuff. But it just works like that. I think if someone's active, they're religious regardless of their sexuality, and if they're not active, then they may just have a faith. Do you want to jump in on this?
Just very quickly, there's a bit of a general distinction of wanting to either have religion or spirituality. I'd say spirituality is what emerges from religion. So religion is the set of disciplines and practices I choose to do. For me, I get up in the morning, I try and pray. I meet it with a community where we read texts and try and make out what they do, and then we try and live that in the week. That's my religion. What emerges is my spirituality. I hope it looks Christ-like.
Cool. Right, any other questions? Should we take the guy at the back and then you? And I think we're probably going to finish it there because it's getting a bit late. People start to leave and I want tea. Bye, Miles. Miles made a recording. Cool. Sorry. Just name and question quickly. No
my name is Matt. At what point does somebody that affiliates themselves to a relatively rigid religion, so maybe one is not a religion that is more open to interpretation, at what point do they become hypocritical if they start only taking parts of that religion which they agree with and still affiliate themselves with a religion, even if that religion's head or hierarchy are against something? So, for example, many Catholics might describe themselves a la carte. They take what they want from it, but they don't agree with the parts about homosexuality. At what point do we think that, should we start calling people hypocrites? Because I think, personally, it's quite damaging to identify as Catholic if you don't agree with many of the things that Catholic people or Catholic Church stands for.
Cool. So basically, can you pick and choose your religion? Or elements of your religion, I should say. Anyone want to jump in? Adam?
Yes.
Oh God. Okay.
Well, we all do.
Adam, you.
Someone's religion is what they tell you their religion is. I'm fairly certain they're capable of thinking for themselves and can believe and can act on what they think is best and believe what they believe in. And it's not my job or anyone else's to tell them that that religion isn't what they say it is.
Everyone does pick and mix. Even the most religious do pick and mix. That's the nature of being a human being. We emphasise or de-emphasise aspects that we feel more easy or difficult according to our own personality. And I mean, it's one. For example, Maimonides, a very famous rabbi and philosopher in Judaism from the 12th century, he says that if you find a particular commandment hard to keep, you should try and emphasize that over the ones that you find easy. Because the ones you find easy you can relate to, you'll be good at those. But the ones that you find difficult, getting up in the morning, that sort of thing. If you find it hard to get up in the morning and pray, like Mark, you should be getting up extra early and praying extra hard in any religion, because you're trying to correct the flaws in your own character. That's what religion's about, making you a better person. So we all pick different things.
Quickly, you good.
Let me start.
Thank you, Ash.
I'm just preempting.
Yeah, no. So as I see, what it is you don't listen to your elders, to be honest. You find out for yourself. So even if the head of, we have the Akal Takht, which is kind of like the Pope that you guys have in Rome, I guess. If he says something we disagree with, it doesn't necessarily mean he's right. He's a human being. What is right is the scriptures. Is that quick enough?
Yeah, that was very precise. Thank you. Mark, can you pick and mix Christianity?
Churches aren't static. They're always changing. I think it would be healthier if we could be honest about what we do. With Catholic friends, I think most of my Catholic friends are liberal, but they do have to kind of hide it. Maybe they should take a leaf of the LGBT community about coming out. I think that's probably unhealthy. I wouldn't call it hypocritical, though.
Cool. Right, very quickly for the next question. Someone's made the comment, don't judge someone because they sin differently to you. All sin is equal in the eyes of God, which, if I remember primary school, is from the Bible or something. I didn't mean that in a bad way, just me and Sister Dolores didn't get on very well. She wasn't a nice person.
That sin cast the first stone.
Yes, that's what it was. That woman that was accused of adultery. See, I remember Sunday school.
It's not my book though, that one.
I know that's not your book. Your book's the first one, the older one. Yeah, sorry. Go.
Hi, my name is Chaya, and the question I'm going to ask, it touches on two previous questions. First is that I'm a British-born Hindu Punjabi, that's how I identify myself. And in my family, we have this tradition of you've got to read the book by the time you're 21. I'm 21, I've read the book, and it was very long. And I do a lot of reading. And in the book, this is an act, I'm probably going to misquote it, but it actually acknowledges homosexuality. And there's also a mention of the third gender, so, you know, it acknowledges transgenders as well. So in regards to the previous question of an individual who's worried about it, well, according to our scriptures, it's accepted, it's fine. However, the question I want to ask is, there was a question earlier saying that was homophobia coming from religion, but however, what I find is that people get so confused nowadays between what is religion and what is culture, although I personally think they're two separate entities, they get so intertwined all the time. So I guess it's like a reversal of that question. Does homophobia really come from religion, or is it just culture?
Okay, it's kind of a question we've already touched on, but we can rehash it. Does homophobia come from culture?
Yes.
Like, you know, like as a social point of view.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I think
We're going to come back to it again. If we've got a heteronormative society, then it's going to lead to it.
I'm not meant to have an opinion, probably.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's always going to be aspects of it that come from culture and from religion, and I think it's a real mix between the two, and people do get very confused. I think the media likes to portray it just as one, but really it's a mixture.
Is yours yes as well?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you can pretty much change religion and culture to peer pressure as a word as well. So as a Sikh, I wasn't always, I was a Sikh in terms of being born into a Sikh family, but I got baptised 2 years ago. I only started wearing a turban and covering my head when I was in year 9, so I was 13, 14 years old. And the amount of peer pressure and stuff after that was ridiculous. And I seriously mean ridiculous. I think that's the exact same, doesn't matter how you identify yourself or how you change yourself. Peer pressure is always going to lead to some kind of, I want to say phobia, but is that all right?
Yeah. 2 seconds.
A friend of mine is going through a very difficult period at the moment. They are what I would call liberal academic. They are in love with a girl who's converting to Judaism. They are being forced into a cultural milieu that is totally against their own milieu, because they won't allow her to convert and him to marry her unless they toe the line within the orthodox framework that they're within. So they're going to be forced into a milieu where it's normal to be homophobic. But that's not what they are. So I think it's very cultural, because he's a very religious man, he's a very orthodox man, but they're going to be forced into that milieu, and they're going to have to find ways of resisting the cultural milieu that they'll be forced into. So yeah, it's very much as cultural.
Cool. I think then, should we end there? Is everyone happy to end there? Yeah, no burning desire.
I have a question.
Is everyone having to take one more question?
It's shorter than my previous one.
Damn. As was the Bible. Go on.
Was that too narrow, mate?
All together. Right, go on. One more, and it's 5 seconds. Go.
A couple of times, people have spoken about choice, and then when challenged that homosexuality is not a choice, said yes, but coming out is. Why did you assume that people weren't homosexual before they came out? Because saying that coming out is a choice implies that everyone is kind of like a default acting heterosexual before they come out as a homosexual. Why does that have to be the case? What would you say if you had
we've got it. That was 3 times longer than I asked for.
Yeah, I think that's probably my mistake, or my phrasings of things. As a Sikh, there isn't a choice. You basically get married to for me, get married to a guy, and if you're a girl, you get married. No, I am a girl. Oh, am I wrong? Well, I hope so. No, I get married to a guy, and a guy will get married to a girl. So when I said it's a choice, for me, absolutely. If you want to, this sounds totally wrong now. If you are gay, absolutely fine. But as a Sikh, there is no choice. I think that's where the difference and the wrong phrasing may have come.
Much more interesting if we could move the concept of coming out away from one particular sexuality to coming out as different kinds of people.
I think this stems from a lack of understanding of sexual fluidity and probably as well gender fluidity. People more aware of that, then I don't think what you said would be much of a problem.
Actually, in paganism, it isn't so much coming out. There's 2 very specific. I know for in a woman's life, the 2 big specific things you do around teenage years is you should be open with your covenant about when you start menstruating, and next one is when you start being sexually active, because it changes your position in ritual. But there's no question really there what sexually active would mean, nor is there a question on who it's with. But they're always encouraged to join in. You end up almost outing yourself by accident. But let's not forget, unfortunately, with coming out, half the time, if people know you, they tend to figure it out. And I know actually this Christmas seemed to be, for me, for some reason, a Christmas of coming out. Both my girlfriend and my best friend came out to their family, and no one was surprised. They both came from religious backgrounds. No one was surprised, and it was just like, yeah. So it is one of them. I think, although coming out is a thing that is good to do, a lot of people do it, a lot of people have to do it. There's, at the end of the day, people, especially in more modern society, are starting to clock on earlier.
Cool. I'm going to need to end there. Great. Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for asking questions and to the panellists. Ben and the rest of LGBT SOC for putting this on. Thank you, Ben. And go on Twitter and have a look at the hashtags. Some quite non-questions, but sort of ideas and passing comments have been quite interesting for me to read anyway. So yeah, Ben, I don't know. You go.
I'd just like to say thank you to Tom for being our excellent chair tonight. And thank you all so much for coming tonight, and thank you for all your amazing questions.